Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the regular session for July 19, 2023 of the Kansas City, Kansas Board of Public Utilities Board of Directors meeting. I'd like to welcome everyone who is here in person with us tonight. If you're viewing online or listening online, we'd like to remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded, both audio and video. Please keep that in mind. As always, there's a public comment section. If you're in the room, please use the sign-up sheet at the executive assistance desk. If you're on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature on the app. Each member of the public who wishes to speak shall provide their name and address, please. And we would ask that you direct the comments to the board only, and you have a maximum of 5 minutes for your comments. I'd like to remind everyone that the public comment section of tonight's agenda is not a part of the rate hearing, and no questions regarding the rate hearing will be answered. All comments that are made this evening are public. We caution anyone who speaks tonight not to disclose confidential account information or disclose account information about an account that is not in your name. Staff will not be able to provide individual account information or history in an open meeting for confidentiality reasons. Members of the public may also call or email BPU with questions or concerns. If you do not know who to call or email at BPU, my email address is rhenry@bpu.com. Please shoot me an email and we'll get it to the right place. Tonight's agenda and presentations can be found on the BPU website on the board meetings tab. If you're using Zoom, they will appear on your screen. I'd like to remind everybody that this is a business meeting of the Board of Directors, and we will conduct this meeting accordingly. And I'd like to introduce the following rules that will apply to this meeting tonight and all board meetings going forward. Every person in this room tonight will act respectfully toward each other. Personal attacks, accusations toward any person will not be tolerated. Please state your specific issue or question to the board only. The board will determine staff's involvement at that point. Attendees shall refrain from side discussions or individual commentary that interfere with speakers or other attendees at this meeting. If side discussions are necessary, please take them outside the boardroom. If any of these rules are breached during the course of the meeting, the attendee is subject to removal from the boardroom. I am Rose Mulvaney Henry, member at large, position 3, and current board president. Other members of our board and staff include Bill Johnson, general manager, David Haley, member at large, position 2, Tom Groneman, 2nd district and current board vice president, Bob Mylan, 1st district and current board secretary, Jeff Bryant, 3rd district, Mary Gonzalez, member at large, position 1, and Angela Lawson, our acting chief counsel. I'd like to remind everybody, put your phones on silent. Microphones are all throughout the room. They're very sensitive. They can pick up and record comments anywhere in the room. Before we begin our meeting this evening, I'd ask that you join me and rise in citing the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic and one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Angela, may I get roll call, please?
Roll call: Haley,
Present.
Mylan, Mulvaney Henry,
Here.
Bryant,
Here.
Gonzalez,
Here.
Groneman.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Before I ask for a motion to approve the minutes of the regular, before I ask for a motion to approve the regular session agenda for July 19, 2023, are there any comments, revisions, et cetera?
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Roll call: Haley,
Aye.
Mylan,
Aye.
Mulvaney Henry,
Aye.
Bryant,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Groneman.
Aye.
That motion carries.
Thank you. Before I ask for a motion to approve the minutes of the work session of July 5th, 2023, are there any revisions, suggestions, edits, etc.?
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Roll call Haley,
Aye.
Mylan. Mulvaney Henry,
Aye.
Bryant,
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Groneman.
Aye.
That motion carries.
Thank you. Before I ask for a motion to approve the minutes of the regular session of July 5th, 2023, are there any revisions, edits, etc.?
Move to approve the minutes of the regular session of July 5th.
Marvin, second.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Roll call Haley,
Aye.
Mylan.
Aye.
Mulvaney Henry,
Aye.
Bryant,
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Groneman.
Aye.
That motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Madam President. Under the public comment section, we do have 4 people signed up in attendance here today. First, I'll call Bill Griffin to come up to the mic. You can state your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes to address the board.
Thank you. My name is Bill Griffith. I belong to the Climate Protection Plan Steering Committee of Kansas City, Missouri. So I'm actually a Kansas City, Missouri resident. However, my wife and I do have a house we own in the BPU service territory here. And just wanted to say a couple brief words kind of as an invitation to work on a couple things together if BPU would like to with the city of Kansas City. And it's really on the Inflation Reduction Act, where a lot of money is coming into areas such as Kansas City, Kansas, Kansas City, Missouri. And the Climate Protection Plan Steering Committee is working with the Office of Environmental Quality, Kansas City, Missouri, and just working on how to navigate all of this. And we invite BPU or Unified Government, if it's goes that direction, if they'd like to, be in contact with us on this, give us feedback, learn what we're doing, have coffee with me. I'm kind of one of the main ones working on this. I'm retired, so I have a little more time than some of the staffers of Office of Environmental Quality. But there's several great programs, and I'm not going to spend much time on them. But the one with heat pumps, heat pump water heaters, where many of the constituents of BPU could get these for free, and it will be a lower cost than what it is for their natural gas. And we did a lot of research on that. I was in charge of the buildings on that, and the city council members from the city of Kansas City, Missouri said, look, if heat pumps are going to cost more to run than the natural gas furnaces, we can't go that direction. So we worked a lot on this and worked through this, and heat pumps are cheaper, the newer heat pumps and the technology. So I'll be glad to talk with anyone on that and what we're looking at doing. Some of the grants we're working on, maybe some of them we could work together. Anyway, this is just kind of an open invitation on that. I left my email on the sign up sheet there. So if there's interest from BPU on this, because this could certainly add to, I know it's a nonprofit compared to Evergy. We work with Evergy a lot. Evergy, of course, wants a larger market share, but assuming that BPU would like, their clients to be a little more, in-house and not have to deal with natural gas and also save money, there's some really great programs in here that we're navigating through. We don't have all the answers yet, but I think we're on the right track. So again, kind of an open invitation there for anyone to chat. And then I did note there was something that's available to BPU because it's a nonprofit and not available in Kansas City, Missouri, although this is not my main bailiwick, is there's quite a bit of money for renewables at the utility level for nonprofits, and also work on, closing coal plants for nonprofits, not for Evergy. That's a different ballgame. And we got a lot of work we're doing with Evergy on that. So there's a couple other things on there. So anyway, if someone wants to have coffee with me or have me come over and we chat a little bit, with someone, whether it's staff or anyone on the commission, we're open to it. So thank you.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you.
Mr. Griffin, we do have a team working on all the federal funding, and since you did leave your email address, I'll have one of my team members follow up with you.
Great.
Thank you.
Sounds good. We look
Thank you.
forward to working with KCK.
Hey, David, hold up for 1 second. So I'm getting multiple sign-up sheets. If there's anybody else in the room that wishes to speak, you can go up and sign up now. We'll make sure we do call you up. I just want to make sure that I get a complete list, because we may run out of forms after a while. So if there's anybody else that wish to speak tonight, please go over. Next, I'll call up Rayon. You can state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, Ryan McCarrum, Clean Air Now. We've all met before. I've been here before. I was hoping to speak after everyone else because I'm always talking about the community and the community we work with. And today I have several of our community members here in the room who wanted to share their stories with you. They also attended last week's meeting when you were meeting with the unified government, which unfortunately did not provide for public comments. We were hoping that we could share some stories there with everyone present, but we were glad to see that at least some discussion happened. Personally, I wasn't there, but I was listening in on Zoom, and I'm just gonna save my comments. I'm just gonna let the community speak. I was hoping that something more would have come out of last week's meeting, something more concrete or more evident of progress to be made, especially about the way we bill our utilities. I'm not gonna talk about infrastructure bills today or Justice 40 or the type of energy we're using. We're just gonna focus on the community and the cost that BPU bills can have on this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. Next, I'll ask Anna Romas. Okay. You can state your name and address for the record, please. You have 5 minutes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Atenas. Her name is Ana, but she would feel more comfortable speaking in Spanish. Would it be all right if
Yes.
I was here to provide interpretation?
Yes, so just for clarification, are both of you speaking? I think both are signed up.
Yes,
Are
I'm
you-
actually speaking a different portion,
Okay,
but I was
okay.
just here to support.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I feel more comfortable to speak in my own first language. Yeah, my name is, mi nombre es Ana Ramos, soy una organizadora comunitaria con Clean Air Now, también miembro del vecindario de Armordale, vivo en el código postal 66105. Clean Air Now es una organización de justicia ambiental creada por la comunidad de Wyandotte, y miembros de nuestra organización han asistido a muchas reuniones de la Junta de BPU para hablar directamente con la Junta. Enfocamos nuestros esfuerzos para elevar la voz de la comunidad y desarrollar soluciones comunitarias que en última instancia mantendrán a nuestras comunidades y familias saludables y seguras. Específicamente en lo que respecta a BPU, solicitamos lo siguiente. BPU y UG deben priorizar la transición energética para reducir los costos de energía de los combustibles fósiles, así como para buscar todos los fondos disponibles y posibles para invertir en su infraestructura sin aumentar las tarifas a los clientes. Con esto no solamente queremos reducir el costo económico, sino reducir el impacto ambiental que esto tiene en nuestras comunidades, especialmente en vecindarios como Armordale, sobrecargados por la contaminación. Les pedimos separar la factura de servicios públicos de la factura de impuestos de UG, llamado Pilot, ya que muchas personas no pueden pagar una factura tan grande. Detener los aumentos de tarifas que representan una gran carga energética para las comunidades y las familias, y también detener todas las desconexiones hasta que se trabaje en separar estas facturas.
Hi, my name is Ana Ramos. I am a community organizer with Clean Air Now and also a member of the Armourdale neighborhood, living in the zip code of 66105. Clean Air Now is an environmental justice organization created by the Wyandotte community. And members of our organization have attended many BPU board meetings to speak directly with the board. We focus our efforts to raise the voice of the community and develop community solutions that will ultimately keep our communities and families healthy and safe. Specifically in regards to BPU, we request the following. BPU and the UG must prioritize the energy transition to reduce energy costs from fossil fuels, as well as seek all available and possible funds to invest their infrastructure without increasing rates to customers, such as utilizing the Justice 40 resources at the federal, state, and local levels. With this, to not only reduce the economic costs, to also reduce the environmental impact that this has in our communities, especially in neighborhoods overwhelmed by pollution. We ask you to separate the utility bill from the UG tax bill called the pilot, as many people can't pay a big bill all at once. Stop the rate of increasing the stop rate increases that represent a large energy burden for communities and families, and stop all disconnections until bills are separated.
En los casos que hoy escucharán, traemos dos testimonios. Uno compartirá mi compañera Atenas y otro está un miembro de la comunidad aquí presente. Son casos de familias que están teniendo dificultad para pagar sus facturas. El impacto que está habiendo en muchos miembros de nuestra comunidad, personas mayores que apenas si les alcanza para pagar, con condiciones especiales de salud, madres que luchan para sacar a sus hijos adelante y tienen que decidir entre pagar los altos costos de sus utilidades o comprar comida, y muchas veces por más esfuerzos que hacen termina con el servicio cortado por falta de un mejor servicio y comunicación con el BPU. Dividir la factura de servicios y de impuestos les ayudaría a hacer sus pagos en distintas fechas del mes. También quiero llamar su atención a reconsiderar el tener servicio al cliente en forma presencial. Nuestra comunidad necesita estos servicios.
So you'll be hearing from me directly on behalf of another community member and as well as Ested. And these cases are not isolated. Since families are having great difficulty paying their bills, the impact is relevant. Older people who barely have enough to pay with special health conditions, mothers who struggle of having to pay all of this, and their children have to decide between paying the high costs of their utility bills or buying food. And many times, no matter how hard they try, they end up having their services shut off because of the lack of good customer service and better communication with the BPU. Splitting the utility and tax bill would actually help them manage costs better by having them make their payments on different dates of the month. I also want to call your attention to reconsider having customer service in person because our community needs that service.
Respecto al servicio en persona, escuché en la reunión pasada que tuvieron que no quieren volver al servicio presencial porque no quieren volver atrás. Pero quiero dejarles saber que estas decisiones están afectando a nuestra comunidad, teniendo un impacto en sus bolsillos, la salud de las personas, tanto física como mental, a las que ustedes están sirviendo y están sufriendo las consecuencias de estas decisiones. Lo que estoy escuchando en la comunidad son personas que nos dicen, si tan solo hubiera habido alguien que me hubiera atendido en persona con respeto y con una mejor información, no me hubieran llegado las utilidades tan altas y me hubieran cortado el servicio. Yo misma tuve una situación el año pasado donde por 3 meses me llegaron utilidades mucho más altas de lo que era normal para mí, que vivo sola. Me comuniqué con BPU y fue frustrante llamar y no tener respuesta. Me hacían esperar y esperar para después decirme que me iban a transferir a alguien más y así sucesivamente. Y nadie me dio una respuesta por casi un mes. Hasta que un día vi a un empleado de BPU y tuve que salir corriendo de mi casa para alcanzarlo y hablar con él. Y le dije cuán frustrante era la situación y que ya estaba desesperada y frustrada con el servicio que dan por teléfono y no no podía resolver mi problema. Él me explicó que revisara bien mi factura y el problema podría venir de una fuga de agua y qué cosas podría hacer para reducir el consumo de energía, y mi problema se resolvió ese mismo mes porque alguien decidió tomarse un tiempo para explicarme las cosas. Mi factura se redujo a un poco más de la mitad. No fue por teléfono como solucioné mi problema, fue porque alguien tuvo el tiempo de explicarme cómo se debían hacer. Cleaner Now está aquí para ser un recurso. Juntos podemos llegar a un acuerdo colectivo que priorice las necesidades de la comunidad y aborde las barreras. Así que reconsideren las decisiones que toman y tengan en cuenta que son personas con las que están tratando. Muchas gracias.
Excuse me, Ms. Ramos, is that the last portion of this?
That's the
Because we're
last.
well over time at this point. There's a 5-minute time limit.
Right, and we
So-
understand that her piece is actually 5 minutes, but since I've had to interpret it.
I
does take a little
understand.
bit Of more
I'm just
time.
making sure where we're at.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'll just read the last portion of hers that's in English.
Thank you.
I heard in the meeting you had last week that you do not want to go back to face-to-face service, but those decisions are having a huge impact on the community, the pockets, and causing anguish in their physical and mental health. What I am hearing in the community are people who tell us, if only there had been someone who would have attended me in person with respect, they would have been better informed, the costs would not have reached so high, and their services would not have been cut off. I myself had a situation last year where for 3 months, I received BPU bills that were much higher than what was normal for me, someone who lives alone. I contacted BPU and it was frustrating to call and not get an answer. They made me wait, and then they told me that they were going to transfer me and so on, but no one gave me an answer for more than a month. Until one day I saw a BPU employee on the street outside, and I immediately had to run out to him. I told him my situation and that I was already desperate and frustrated with the service they give over the phone and could not solve my problem. He explained to me that I should check my bill carefully and the problem could come from a water leak. He also provided ideas and shared different tactics on how I could do things differently to change and reduce the energy consumption. And my problem was then resolved that same month, and my bill was reduced to a little more than half because someone took the time to talk with me. Clean Air Now is here to be a resource. Together, we can come to a collective agreement that prioritizes community needs and addresses barriers. Your decisions impact people. It's not just about the numbers. And thank you on behalf
Thank
of
you.
Hannah.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
So can you state your name and
Yes.
address for the record? You have 5 minutes.
So for the record, my name is Atenas Mena. I'm the co-executive director of Clean Air Now, which is the environmental justice organization in Wyandotte County. I'm actually speaking on behalf of a community member that wanted to attend the meeting today, but she got pulled into work. She gave us permission to be able to share her testimony, and we can also provide this in a paper version as well. This was also translated from Spanish to English, so I'll spare and just do the English part. Hello, my name is Tere. I live in zip code 66104. I am a mother of 3 children, and together with my husband, we always strive to support our family and fulfill our responsibilities. I want to share my story so that what happened to me is not repeated with other families, and ask for BPU to have better communication and service. Last year, a few days before Christmas, I had a major leak from the main water line, so I called BPU several times to report what happened, but I couldn't get someone to speak to me, and especially speak to me in Spanish because that's the primary language that I speak. I called several times and even sent an email. It wasn't until my English-speaking daughter could help me that I was able to communicate with them, and they told me they were going to send someone. It took 4 days to send a person who left me a note on my door on Christmas Eve, telling me that I was responsible for solving that problem. Without sufficient guidance, I solved it together with my family the best we could. We hired a plumber and paid him $3,000 to fix what was damaged, and my family and I had to dig up all the dirt ourselves to not be charged more. We had called the inspector, and after several days of waiting for him with no response, we decided to cover the pipe again with dirt because of the cold. We ran the risk of the pipes freezing up and breaking, and who was going to be responsible for that, right? When the inspector from BPU finally showed up, he said he was new at his job and he didn't know how to resolve the situation, and he wasn't going to sign for us so that BPU could be able to give us a discount or acknowledge what we've been able to do and change. That Christmas was horrible. My husband and I were very frustrated. We had to cancel our family dinner at home because of everything we were experiencing. By the time the utility bills arrived, I lost my job because of the work to repair this problem and the time it took to call or visit BPU at their offices to see how to solve and reach an argument on payments. They provided me with a help list, but the places listed could not help me because they were overcrowded. Since I could not manage to pay my bill on time, BPU cut off my electricity in the middle of winter, leaving my children to suffer from the cold. We had to move our family to a relative's house for a few days, in which we managed to pay the bill that was over $2,000 for that month alone. My problem continues though. In the last 3 months, I have received other charges of approximately $600 for wastewater, and I want to know why I keep getting charges for up to 6 months when the problem was only 1 month. Why did they cut off my power if the problem was because of the water? The reason I continue to search for answers is because this all has to get better, as the community needs the services and we deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. My experience let me know that something is not working well with the BPU, and just as they demand that we pay, we demand that they provide better service and take into account that a large population speaks Spanish, so this resource needs to be provided, especially in emergencies. And that was from Teresa Servin, spelled Servin. She did give permission to also share her contact info. She would love to just get some answers to some problems.
Would you please provide that written testimony
Yes,
to
sir.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Yes, and-
Thank you.
And can I ask you to come over, please?
Thanks, Ryan.
All right, thank you. I would like to get your contact information.
Sure.
That way I can follow back up. There was a lot of things that you said
Yeah.
that I want to check on and then follow back up with you, okay? No.
I'll ask her to provide her because she's a resident, so I'll ask her for her
Okay,
address and.
okay. Okay, do you have an email address?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Um,
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry for the delay. There was a lot that was said there. I do want to follow up with Ms. Mania. There's some things that she raised that I'm certainly concerned with, and one of them is how do we continue to improve our service and communication to Spanish-speaking people in our community? That is a huge part of the demographics that make up Wyandotte County. We can't look past that, and we certainly they owe the same type of service to them as any other customer that we serve. So I'll look into some of that and see what we're currently doing to support our Spanish speaking people, and then how customers, and then how do we make improvements upon that. So thank you. Next, I'll ask Esther Amanza. If I didn't pronounce your name correctly, I apologize. If you can come up, state your address, name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Esther Almanza. I live at 6020 Lot 16, Kansas Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas. I recently moved there like 4 months ago. I had previously lived at 824 Barnett here in Kansas City, Kansas. And I had been a customer for the last 8 years with BPU. When I moved to 824 Barnett, when I got my installation of the light there, I paid a deposit fee. I was there for 5 years. So when I moved 4 months ago, I transferred my services, and my account remained the same and everything was the same. The only thing that change was that they added another, my concern is that they added another deposit fee. And I was, concerned or confused. If I'm the same, customer, just a different address, the account number remained the same and everything. Well, it added up my bill to almost $800 or something like that. I don't remember right now. But last Monday, I got home from dialysis. I go to dialysis Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I had been receiving messages that my BPU, my light was gonna be cut off if I didn't pay. I receive a monthly check every beginning of the month because of disability, Social Security. So when they requested that amount paid, I don't have the whole amount, that's the only amount we have to survive, to my husband and I. So I give whatever I can, 150 to 50 to try to cover the bill, but it was like too much. I couldn't do it. So they sent me a bill that they were gonna cut off my light on the 10th. And I said, well, I have till midnight. I'll try to do something. Well, Monday when I get home from dialysis, my light was cut off. And when I get out of there, I'm too tired, exhausted and everything. So I just went to bed and I said, I'll deal with it later. We live in a mobile home, and I don't know how many of you know, it's like a box with a little windows. So the AC wasn't working too well even before then, but then without electricity and no fans, I mean, it was like 90 degrees in there. So I wake up and I'm panicking. What am I gonna do? So I call BPU and I have to pay, like $300. And I go, I don't have that much money, so I call my sons. I got some money borrowed and I was able to pay the bill. That was Monday. Wednesday, I received another message, text message. If I don't pay another, I don't know how much money it is, they're gonna cut off my light again by the 31st. I will not have money by the 31st because I don't get my check till the 3rd of the month. And my worry is like, I can't keep up. I did it before. They say you can call, we can help you. Years ago, like 7 years ago, I tried getting on a flex plan. And yes, they told me we'll help you. You can pay $100 a month or whatever. I was doing that, but then one day I was short 1 penny. It wasn't enough, and they cut off, and I lost the privilege of having that help of paying my bill. And now I have to pay like everything, the previously plus my bill that I owed. So there was no help then at that time. So it is really hard for me right now, thinking, I mean, my son's loaning money. I don't have to probably pay him back, but I'm trying to borrow money now to try to get it so I don't get it disconnected again by the 31st. So if y'all could like do something, and I mean, there's people out there that probably are in worse condition than I am, but it's impossible to be living in conditions with no air, no nothing, no electricity. So if y'all could take that into consideration and just see how people really need help,
Okay.
We appreciate
Are
it.
your service, are you connected today or disconnected?
Oh, it's connected. That
Okay.
same day I had to do something because I wasn't gonna survive without electricity, it was
Okay.
too hot. So,
So we do have a customer service representative, Gabriella Freeman, in the back. I will ask that you visit with her. She'll go over all of the pay options, everything we have that we can offer. And Gabby, I'm not sure too much about her account. I certainly don't have access. I'm just listening to this for the first time. So if you can get with her and then follow up with me tomorrow, appreciate it.
and it's like they say, a lot of times it's like I have to pay my bills first, even if I don't buy groceries,
Okay.
because I don't want to fall into this bracket. And I was
Right.
doing real good, while I was here for 5 years. That's
Right.
the first thing I paid. But as soon as I moved, with that deposit again, it's like it threw me off again,
Okay.
And with the heat and stuff, bills aren't cheap. It's like 250 to 70 a month plus 300, so.
That
and
is
then
time.
The fees, the
Okay.
late charge
Okay.
fees also, it's like,
Okay, Gabriella will go through your account information with you, and then she'll report to me what she finds, and we'll see if there's some way we can help out.
thank you, appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you, Ms. Almanza.
Next, Carlos Ramos. If you can state your name and address for the record, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Carlos Ramos. I live on 1523 Pacific Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas, 66102. I've been there for 34 years. I'm not related to Ana Ramos, just to make that clear. Here in Esther, about the one time here, bill, I mean, her service was cut for 1 penny. I also remember from the last meeting on the 13th, when everybody was there. And they were talking about the pilot program. And for what I remember, is it went up to 12%, it's supposed to go down after so many years, down to 9%, but it didn't happen. And not how long ago was that? But you see, you guys can make a mistake and nothing happens. And we're not talking about 1 penny, right? We're talking about, the customers, thousands of dollars. So it's just to have a little better criterion on certain situations. Okay, I mean, I understand you're a business, but for 1 penny is like. Also, they were talking about the customer service, to be open. I remember, I think it was a commissioner who was asking, that lobby could be open. And I was thinking that question was for, BPU, but then you answered the question. I was kind of surprised. So my question is, you guys own the building? That's why you don't want to open the customer service, in person? Or BPU owns a building? And myself, I have 17 years experience in customer service, collections, that kind of stuff for different companies and banks. And I kind of really, I would say, bad paying my bill because I just kind of don't pay attention. It's not because I don't have money, I just don't pay attention. Usually pay when somebody calls me or they're going to be cut out. But, so I call quite often, right? So, hey, I'm going to pay my bill this amount. And a lot of times, as she mentioned, they will not give you the name you're talking to. Also, if you miss a payment, or what I have heard on the phone when I talk to BPU sometimes, it's like, no, you missed out your payment plan. There's no other one. You have to pay the full amount. And you mentioned, right, and you don't want to be open, the customer service in person. I mean, I don't know, I wish I would like to know if you have ever called to BPU, to customer service, because they are not really that great service. I mean, 17 years of experience on customer service and collections. From my experience, if I hang up on the customer, I lose my job. I mean, just one customer. And I used to talk to 500 customers every day, easy. And I don't know how many times they hang up on me, when can I have your name, your super. So it's something to look into. I was surprised, because again, with that much experience, you can. Also, somebody mentioned, I remember the names. And you guys are BPU receiving quite calls about the trash not being picked up, right? And what surprised me is when this lady said, and I don't know what to do. I mean, on my job, if I'm responsible for certain activities in the company and something happens and I'm responsible for that, I cannot say, I don't know what to do to my boss. If I say that, most likely I'm gonna get fired from them. I mean, so I will say,
You
all
have
what
1
we have to
minute.
do, try to work with everybody, because it's the right thing to do. It's plain and simple. At the end, it's not about money, it's about the right thing to do with certain situations. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Ramos, thank you for attending the meeting the other day. There was a long time since this board of directors and the commissioners all met. We did have a conversation on how we can better communicate as two elected bodies to the community, but also address some of the issues that that people have presented to us. And I think BPU will hopefully continue to talk to the unified government about removing some of the charges off our bill, continue to find ways of working with the community in a better way than what you may see is currently taking place. But we have no control over the pilot. Those fees are set by the unified government. We have no control over trash pickup or the trash fees that's on the bill either. So
For what I understand, the pilot was not there before, many years ago. And then somebody decided to put it in there. And then somebody decided
the pilot has been there
3%
for,
to 6%.
the pilot has been there as long as anybody in this room can
But the
remember.
increases, when you guys decide from go from 9 to 12, it was just. a
That is
decision.
time.
Mr. Ramos, and just, sorry, Bill. The pilot rate is set by the unified government, and this board of directors right here has no input into it. We can't influence it in any way. They tell us what the rate's gonna be. We put it on the bill. It goes out to every customer like you. And I can assure you, it bothers us as much as it bothers you. I'm a resident here too. Everybody here is. We all pay it too. We hear you, and we're hoping that we can get some relief, as Bill said, working together with the Unified Government Commissioners. I mean, we hear everybody in this room tonight, and I'm sure we'll have more folks.
Okay. Well, it
We're-
would be great.
We're
If
trying.
Something you can do. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Rob, is there anyone online waiting to speak?
Yes, sir.
Hold on. First of all, is there anyone else in the room wanting to speak? If you do, can you please sign up now? I'm gonna turn to people that are logged in remotely after this. Next is David Smith. If you can come up and state your name and address for the record, please. You have 5 minutes.
My name is David Smith, and I live 400 Troop Avenue here in Kansas City, Kansas, 66101. I tried the other day to get into the VPU offices. An hour later, I still hadn't got on, and they switched me over, and I got cut off. Why can't we get the office open downstairs for the go in and see somebody instead of trying to talk on the telephone? Can't ever get through. Ever. And this isn't the first time, and I'm not the only one either. So why can't we get that office opened up again? That's my question. For as much as paid to BPU on our bills or whatever is, that's fine. I understand pay raises. I understand how it works. I know that everything has to go up because of the pandemic. The only problem with everything going up is a lot of people in Wyandotte County are still not able to pay their bills, period. So they lose their water or their electricity. Then the next thing is the gas gets shut off. The next thing is they get evicted. All because they have nobody to talk to except the telephone. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to get cut off anyway. And as far as the pilot program and trash and things, that's not on you. That's on Wyandotte County. That's because people do not understand that the BPU does not control Wyandotte County Courthouse. Wyandotte County Courthouse did the same thing almost, back in the 40s. And they conned BPU into going in with United Federal Government, and it's been a mess ever since then. And you people do the best you can, listening to everybody here with their complaints. And for the amount you people get paid by the year, that's just probably about enough to pay your utility bills. So therefore, you're in the same position we are. No wonder you people go home and drink a beer or two. I would too after I had to put up with all this garbage. But we've got to do something to get the offices downstairs opened up again so people can come in and talk to them. I don't know how it's going to happen or how it's going to get done, but it needs to get done yesterday. Thank you. That's all
Thank
I
you,
have
Ms.
to say.
Smith. Rob, if you can tell me the name of the first one and unmute them. Okay, Lisa? Okay, all right, is she unmuted? So if you can state your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes to speak.
Okay, my name is Valenta Locke and I stay on 52nd. I was in the meeting before I wanted to make it today, but unfortunately, I'm trying to help out LEAP. LEAP is to help assist Kansas residents with paying their light and gas bills. This increase is going to kill our residents. I have to tell you, I'm looking at people's BPU bill is the highest, unfortunately, but I have realized that we have more fees than these other counties do, or other cities do. But beside the point, they're continuously shutting down residents who already cannot pay, who are waiting on LEAP, but the state is short-staffed. So we're currently working on February apps, and we're trying to help these. I'm sorry, it's already shut off, which means only a little portion that's going to their bill is still going to remain shut off. It's too hot. People are disabled. There's our elderly people. And I know elderly people who will sit in a hot house and suffocate themselves before asking for other help. We absolutely cannot increase. And I agree with the gentleman before who said that we need to go down to the UG. We absolutely need to go down to the UG. However, we need to be at BPU as well. Please, I am begging the board members, do not agree to this rate increase, because it will bring you to tears if you sit down at the state for just 2 weeks and see these people down here crying. Some work, some don't. I understand. However, it's almost impossible to pay rent and a BPU bill, because a lot of these BPU bills are the same as rent and mortgages. So thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, Ms. Locke.
Rob, is there anyone else?
Yes, sir. Next is Carrie McCarthy.
So if you can unmute her. And if you can state your name and address for the record, you have 5 minutes to speak. She hung up.
Carrie, you are showing as unmuted, but we're not getting any volume on our side.
Can we come back to her, Rob? Is there anyone else? She's the last one. Okay. She's still muted on her side, Rob?
She is unmuted. Well, now she's just there. Carrie, I've sent you a chat in the chat for the Zoom. If you can respond back with your phone number privately, I can have the system contact you directly for the audio connection.
Okay. So we're gonna close out the public comment section, and then I'm gonna go into the general manager staff reports. The only thing that's listed, first thing listed is the continuation of our 2023 electric and water rate hearing. Kathy, I guess we'll call you up.
I'll first defer to the hearing officer, Mr. Ken Moore.
Thank you. I'm going to call to order the continuation of 2023 electric water rate hearing. My name is Ken Moore, I'm the appointed hearing officer. This is the fourth session of the rate hearing process. The first two sessions dealt primarily with public education and receiving public comment. The third session was consideration by the BPU board. Ask the council to review their appearances.
Kathy Peters on behalf of BPU, and I don't know whether Teresa Woody on behalf of Sierra Club is on Zoom, but she had indicated at the last meeting that she would attend via Zoom, and we sent her a reminder today.
I am on Zoom. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, this is Teresa Woody. I'm representing the Sierra Club, is intervened on behalf of its members who are BP ratepayers and customers. And the Sierra Club has entered to ask the board to amend any order within this rate hearing to include the following requirements for BPU staff. One, to determine the most economic retirement date for its coal plant, the Nearman coal plant, through a transparent integrated resource planning process that incorporates ratepayer input. Two, to proactively procure new resources to replace the energy and capacity that Nearman presently provides. Three, to avoid long-term coal contracts and contracts with must-take clauses that reduce flexibility. And four, to minimize self-commitment practices as much as possible. Thank you.
Ms. Peters, would you like to proceed?
Sure, I'll just give a brief summary and then turn this back over to BPU staff. As Mr. Moore indicated, the board began considering this matter at your July 5th meeting. You asked for more information. The hearing was continued until this evening, July 19th. The staff put together a PowerPoint presentation that gave the additional information that had been requested. And we would like to have the staff present that to everyone. And I've also forwarded that to Ms. Woody. And I do note that the BPU staff had prepared a proposed order for the board that was presented to you for consideration on July 5th. Ms. Lawson has updated that with the date of today. If you wish to undertake that order or a different one, that's up to you. I'm going to turn it over to the staff to present the PowerPoint presentation now.
Good evening. Okay. Good evening. Tonight, we'll go through a short PowerPoint presentation. And basically this presentation is to answer the questions that were brought up by the board at the last meeting and to show the impact of alternatives that were requested. So this first slide basically looks at, the inflation percentages that we applied to our rate proposal. What we did, we also looked back over about a 15-year period just to see what our actual experience has been through 2008 to 2021. And so we've averaged about 2.8% overall inflation. So we feel like our escalation rates that we presented in our study are conservative, but also kind of look at what we have historically gone through. Next slide looks dealing with our water rate proposal. So the Black & Veatch recommendation, we did a 5-year study. And so that top section of the chart is the full study. It required a 6% increase through 2027. Staff had recommended to the board, our original recommendation was to do 6% over a 3-year period. Good grief. And when we look at that study, staff recommendation, we were able to achieve our metrics of 100 days of cash on the water side, and we'd be able to maintain that through 2026. So we did the 3 years, not to, burden for a 5-year period, but then we would then look at and open up our study again in 2025, looking at 2026 and 27. Our days cash would remain over the 100 days, and our debt coverage, we would be able to maintain our target of 1.6 throughout the study period. The requested alternative was looking at 90 days of cash. So that would reduce the rate to the 5.5%. The alternative 2 was the full study. So it would have required a 5.5% increase for the first 3 years and a 5.25% in year 4 and 5. So our proposal for the 3-year, we would reach our 90 days at the beginning of the study period, but then in year 4 and 5, we would not meet our 90-day criteria for days of cash. We would meet our days debt coverage of 1.6 times throughout the study period. So just some of the notes up above, all the options, for a 3-year period failed to meet the 100 days, but we felt that being able to meet it over the first 3 years and being able to look at it in future years would be more appropriate. So in Waters, got a lot of big projects coming up, and we're trying to meet those requirements. So it's important for us to have the cash enabled to meet our capital program. So the next slide is just looking at, we did a rate comparison based on an average water customer, which our average is around 6 CCFs. So the first chart there in 2023, the green represents what our current existing rates are, which is about 42.69. The gray represents the staff recommendation of the 100 days of cash proposed. And then the blue represents the 90 days. So the difference between the existing rates and the 100-day cash, or the gray, is about $1.98 a month. And the difference between the existing and the 90-day proposal is about $1.86 a month. So a difference of about 12 cents between the 100 days and the 90 days. So as we move out to 2024, the difference between the 100 and the 90 days is 36 cents a month. Year 3 represents about 54 cents a month, and that carries out to year 4 and 5 due to no additional increases. So overall, for over the 5-year period, it's on average about $5.70 a month increase. Next slide looks at our rate proposal. So our staff recommendation was to meet our debt coverage of 1.6 times and days cash. We were targeting 120 days of our ERC reserve and 120 days of operating and maintenance. This would meet our debt coverage proposal of 1.6 times throughout the study period. And we'd be able to maintain our days, or we would meet our 120 days target beginning in 2025 and be able to maintain it at that point. And this was looking at a rate increase in 2023 of 2.5% and one in 2024 at 2.5%, but nothing the remainder of the study period. We broke down the bill in the middle section there. So the customer charge would go up. The components associated with that increase would, the customer charge would go up $2 per month in 23, and then again in 24. At the bottom there, we identified the value of what that ERC reserve rider would be. So it would be about $1.49 a month. So in total, in 2023, the increase in the bill would be $5.93, while in 24 it'd be $2.97. The middle graph is the alternative that was requested for us to look at, is looking at 90 days of the ERC reserve and 90 days of operating and maintenance. So we would maintain our debt coverage requirement throughout the study period. And this would require just a 1-year rate increase of 2.5% in the first year. So we'd meet our debt coverage over the study period. We would not reach our 90 days of cash until 2024. We'd be able to maintain that through 26, but then it would drop off significantly in 2027. In the middle graph, the components of the bill, still the customer charge would be $2. So overall, at the bottom, the ERC reserve, knocking it down to 90 days on the ERC reserve would be 93 cents a month. So in total, the changes would be about $5.37 per month. The last grouping is we provided another alternative. So this was 90 days of the ERC reserve and 120 days of the operating and maintenance reserve. So this will require a rate increase of 1.5% in 23 and 1.5% in 24. What I will also note, as well as with the second graph there, in order to meet the requirements, I'll go back to the middle graph. In order to meet the requirements of our 90 days cash and also our debt coverage in 2027, it would require a 3.5% increase. So that would be further out. So for the 90 days of ERC and 120 days of O&M, we would look at the 1.5% in 23 and 24. But in order to maintain our days of cash and our debt coverage, it would require a 3.5% in 2026 and 2% in 2027. So the middle section, breaking down the bill, again, the customer charge would go up $2. The ERC reserve would be maintained at 93 cents for the 90 days of ERC reserve. So the total changes is about $4.27 in 2024 and $1.67 in 2025. I will note, our plan is our plan, and we have very little margin for error. We all know that things happen, and even as we came out of our last study, meeting our targets is tough. But I will mention that I think I've told you that we've been going through our rating agencies annual reviews and the importance of our credit rating. It's important to this organization because of our long life of assets and our needing our ability to go out and borrow money in order to keep our infrastructure going. So not being able to maintain our rating, cost us additional money with higher interest rates. But so that's what we're trying to preserve as well as we go into the future. So the rating agencies are keeping a close eye on us and going through this process. So You know, it's a positive for us to be able to make adjustments when we need to make them. So I had a conversation with Stitch, and you know, they've been listening to our meetings and things like that. So you know, we're cognizant of that, and we're trying to, you know, keep them informed as to what we're doing as well. So also want to note just reserves, how important reserves are to us. And, you know, this last weekend was just a prime example of how, you know, we need reserves. And with the storm moving through and the cost associated with that, you know, we're, you know, looking at probably roughly $1 million that we've, you know, having to spend in order to get our service territory back up and functioning. So, and it's an uncertainty whether it's even reimbursable. So, you know, those are events that create the unexpected impact, you know, to our rate studies. So at this time, before we go for questions, I guess I'll turn it over to Andrew Ferris. Rob, if you can go to the next slide. He's going to talk about the energy rate component. I know we had some questions about that. And so we'll go through that and then we can go for questions.
Thanks, Lori. Good evening. Yeah, I wanted to touch briefly on what the energy rate component is, how it functions. And so the energy rate component is a rider meant to provide for the recovery of the utility's power supply costs. These costs are predominantly made up of fuel, purchase power cost, reagent cost, regional transmission costs associated with SPP, those type of things. And then you divide that against retail sales. And that gives you a cents per kilowatt hour in terms of what the ERC rate is. And we true that up every quarter based on what actual costs come in. So we project it coming into the quarter, and then we true it up at the end of the quarter. And so that's what we do every quarter looking forward. And so those are always variable costs, right? Based off of what fuel costs are, based off of output, based off of how much sales we have. Every time you turn on your light, that's, you know, one more kWh that you guys are pulling that maybe we didn't forecast for. So those are changing every quarter, and we look at those costs. And so as part of some of our purchase power agreements, so these are part of our purchase power costs. So purchase power agreements are really the contracts that we have generally with our renewable products, right? Our hydro, our wind, our those type of products out there. And some of those agreements have capacity payments associated with those. And capacity is not the energy component, so it doesn't vary month to month. It is based off the ability to produce. And so it does not vary based off of the actual kWh that's getting produced at these hydro facilities or those type of facilities. And currently we have about 4.6 million in capacity payments. About 2.6 million of those capacity payments were moved to base rates before my time, I believe 2010. We have about 2 million left in capacity payments within the ERC itself today that we collect as part of the ERC. Staff believes this should be collected through the base rates. And so the recommendation is to move that $2 million in capacity charges today that you're collecting already today as part of the ERC rates, to move those to the base rates. So effectively, that's going to move the ERC rate down by $2 million annually going forward. And so you already see those reflected in the base rates that Lori has presented. So those are part of the increase as you're seeing $2 million come off the ERC rate. Those are already housed in that base rate that we're asking today for approval on. And then getting into the ERC component, due to volatility within the fuel and purchase power costs over the past few years, staff is recommending establishing a reserve fund to cover up to 120 days of ERC expenses and to hedge against future volatility in this market. We see that every quarter in and out. And if you look at year after year, the volatility is growing and growing. And that's because the supply is changing. And we expect that supply to continue to change. And that adds volatility. We've seen it in the gas market. We're seeing it in the energy market. And that's going to only continue. We were on the right side of Uri back in February 2021. Very favorable conditions for us to be on the right side of Uri. Next time, if we're not on the right side of Uri, you're going to be in a short position that now you're coming to ask, where's that money at? And that's what those reserve funds are for, both for the credit agencies as well as peace of mind and security for our ratepayers today. Next slide, please. So the ERC reserve fund is only collected through the ERC, and the funds within the ERC reserve fund can only be utilized for and within the ERC. So none of the funds collected as part of the ERC reserve fund would be used for projects on the O&M side. This is specifically for fuel and purchase power activities. And so it's expected to take approximately 18 quarters or 4.5 years to collect that 120 days of ERC expenses. So that assumes effectively $1.5 million collected a quarter. But staff is recommending adding some guardrail language to prevent the collection or holding of ERC reserve funds in periods of upward mobility, right? So the ERC is volatile, it moves up and down every quarter. If the ERC projection is set to climb by 20% or more, the ERC reserve fund will not be billed for the quarter. For example, if your ERC rate was 1 cent and the ERC rate was set to move to 1.2 or greater, we would not ask to collect those funds during that quarter. So that $1.5 million, that would not be collected during that quarter because the ERC rate is angled up at 1.2% or 20%, right? So if the ERC, and then, so that's on the front side, right? So as we're forecasting, if the forecast says that the rate should increase more than 20%, we're saying we're not going to collect that reserve fund this quarter. We're going to leave that and it'll delay the time before we get to meeting 120 days. But it provides that protection from going too high, right? It prevents that from growing. On the reconciliation side, if the ERC reconciliation reflects an under recovery of 5 million or more, any ERC reserve funds collected during the quarter will be applied to the ERC with no funds crediting the reserve fund. So if we under collect, meaning that we didn't collect enough money from all of us ratepayers of 5 million or more, that ERC that I did reserve in my forecast, I'm going to apply that against the ERC to reduce that ERC balance from, we'll say 5 million to 3.5 million. So therefore reducing the long-term impact and then again, delaying the time before we get to 120 days. If the ERC reconciliation reflects an under recovery of greater than 8 million, any and all funds necessary will be pulled from the existing ERC reserve fund to limit the under recovery to a maximum of 8 million, assuming funds are available to do so. So let's say we do have a URI type event and we under recover by $10 million. Assuming that we have $2 million in the ERC reserve fund, we will pull all of those funds out of the ERC reserve fund to reduce that ERC burden to a maximum of $8 million. So therefore, it eliminates or reduces the opportunity for the ERC to be short greater than $8 million. So the goal is not to, in times of volatility, to reduce that volatility by pulling out of that reserve fund. Yes, the goal is to reach 120 days, and that's where we anticipate getting to. But if those volatility does exist on the upward side, we do have guardrails in place that help limit that exposure. And on that note, I'll take any questions.
Hey, Andrew.
Yes.
Thanks for the presentation. So in the event that we have to draw against the ERC reserve fund,
yep,
we have to continually impose the ERC reserve rider in order to build that fund back up. Is that accurate? Am I understanding that right?
So the goal in perpetuity is to collect 120 days of ERC funds. And so whatever time frame it takes to get to 120 days is how long it takes, right? If we have no periods where we expect the rate of increase to be greater than 20%, or at no time do we ever exceed 5 million or 8 million under collection, we will always be collecting that 120 days. But if the occurrence occurs where we are under collected, we will then pull from that ERC reserve fund to reduce that ERC balance, right? And then, yes, now you went from a balance in your ERC reserve fund of say 2 million to now 0. Now you're at 0 in your ERC reserve fund. So yes, you have to continue to collect until you get to 120 days of ERC cash.
Okay. As we sit here today, if we had the ERC reserve fund in place today at 120 days, what's the approximate value of that today?
Say that again?
If we had the ERC reserve fund at 120 days in place today, what's the value of that
It'd be
today?
about 27 million.
27 million. Thank you.
That makes up about 43% of the total 120 days. So O&M makes up about 57%. ERC makes up about 43.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Andrew, this is Jeff. So to simplify it as much as I can, make sure that I understand this, these are just imaginary numbers. If we're collecting $1 for ERC, plus we're collecting 10 cents for the ERC reserve, and we get to the end of a quarter and we've fallen and the ERC needs to jump up more than $1.20, we will just not collect that 10 cents for the reserve for that next quarter because we've gone too high.
That's correct.
And then if we get to the point that the funds are under collected of, let's say we've got to the 120 days and we have 27 million in our ERC fund and we feel comfortable that we're not going to negatively impact our customers with this big swing of our ERC. And we find out that we're $18 million short in a quarter. We will just take that 18 million out of the reserve fund and then not have to impact that dollar so much, and then just keep collecting the 10 cents until we build it back up.
That's the right model. Yes.
Okay.
So effectively we would so once we reach 120 days, we no longer collect,
Yeah.
right? It's not like a in perpetuity type thing. It's when you get to 120 days, whatever that 120 days represents. And obviously these numbers move and ebb and flow. But 120 days, once you reach that point, it no longer is a collectible feature, right? So it should go away, knock on wood, assuming all costs remain relatively stable in beginning of 2028. But absolutely. So if we were to hit $10 million under collection, we would pull 2 million from the reserve fund to reduce that burden and spread that out. And yes, then I would have to go collect my 10 cents for the next couple quarters to get back to my 120 days. Yeah.
And in absence of having that reserve fund, basically, if we come up $8 million short at a quarter, that next quarter, that's gonna be on the bills. It's gonna raise the ERC rate to recoup that $8 million if we didn't have this reserve fund to pull it from. So
absolutely.
So this will, in theory, and I would imagine in practical application, it will help kind of smooth the peaks and valleys on the ERC rate so that people have a more stable expectation of what their bill will be.
It should reduce the volatility on that because you got some cushion to bandwidth with it to play with. Yes.
And over collection, it's still handled the way that it is now. They'd be rebated or
Yeah,
what?
absolutely. So the over collection piece works exactly the same as it does today. So let's say my forecast effectively says I needed this much, but cost came in lower, whatever those uses are. And therefore we have a over collection of $2 million. In that next quarter, we are going to give back that $2 million back through a reduced ERC rate. Yep, absolutely. No other question? Thank you very much.
I'm going to do one more housekeeping thing and then turn this back over to the board. Mr. Moore, I would like to proffer this PowerPoint presentation to be part of the rate hearing file.
Does the intervener have any comments or objection?
No objection, thank you.
You'll be received. Thank you.
Thank you. And so, ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions for staff or of me, it's now back in your hands.
I'll open it up to the other board members if there's any questions that any other board member has for the staff this evening. Mr. Bryant?
Lori, I have a question about, so on the third, I guess you'll have to pull back up the PowerPoint, Rob, and it's the one that has the 3 models for the electric. And basically, my question is going to be on the third scenario where it was 120 days of O&M and 90 days of the ERC reserve fund. So I'm looking at that and I'm seeing days cash on hand peaks 2025, diminishes in 26, but still stays above. And in 27, we're at, 89 to 91, I don't know the exact number, percent of the 90 days that we were looking for. And I know that as with any prediction on this, it's hard to gauge inflationary rates, what's going to happen, impacts as far as usage in the city, unexpected costs and everything. But, my projection kind of looks at that. If we did the 1.5 and the 1.5, now my question is secondary question on this, but if we did the 1.5, 1.5, it looks to me like we could probably hold off until 2028 before we'd need to go back into a rate hearing for the electric side. I know that 83 and 27 isn't the optimal, but if we know it's coming, we can also do our bonding if we have to the year before while we're still above 90 days or try to. But my question is on the non-residential rates, the commercial and industrial rates. Are we anticipating just leaving them the way they was presented from the beginning? Or does this impact them as well as impacting? I can't remember. I know I looked through all that and now I'm trying to remember what it was.
One second.
And it's worth it this time to mention that, as I look through mountains of evidence on this, the original rate study, which is done by an impartial group that tells us where you're at as a utility, what you collected. This is fairly what you should apply to each of your groups, the residential, commercial, and industrial. The residential was, we were told that residential needs to go up about 11.5%. Unfortunately, that's not realistic in our community. So I'm very happy that staff was able to work with everybody to bring in a much lower rate for the residential and put the extra burden onto our commercial and industrial, which I know it's not fair, but our city has its own unique issues and problems that it deals with. And I think that I didn't see that the Fairfax group intervened, which tells me that they get it and they're okay with that. They understand that they're going to carry a burden that is above what they should have to carry. But I think that they understand the environments and are willing to shoulder a little bit more burden than is their responsibility.
So with the staff recommendation, the residential was at 3.75%. And then the commercial and large power were at 1.75%. So if the 90-day ERC and the 120-day O&M, it would bring the residential down to 2.25%. And also the commercial and large power would drop to 1.05%.
Okay.
And Lori, so when I'm assuming that the entire model was rerun with the various inputs, is that right?
That's right.
Okay. And so, I mean, is there a reason that we didn't see like the new cost study with on both sides with the alternatives? I mean, I know we're seeing like the residential portion, but like what Jeff just asked, I would have liked to have seen that as well. Was there a thought process that went into?
You mean why we didn't run the commercial and everything?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's in the model and everything. No, we didn't present it here tonight.
Okay.
So my follow-up question on that is, so the rate change reduction for is basically just in line with what everything dropped proportionally?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Bill, I had asked you at one point in time about the fixed customer charge.
Right.
And what effect that would have if we reduce that on the lower, on the customers that have, are struggling. And how much that would be, how many customers that, that effect would affect, and what that revenue impact would be.
Did we run them all for reducing that down, Lori?
For reducing the
Fixed
customer
cost,
charge
yeah, the customer
on,
charge.
I'm sorry,
The customer charge, yes.
on residential.
Residential for basically for the people that would qualify for utility assistance and that sort of thing.
So I remember part of a conversation. I don't know that we have the data to suggest
Right.
where all of our customers are, in terms of what their household finances look like. So, okay.
Well, I know that in the presentation that we got from the UG where they were talking about the pilot.
Right.
And their utility assistance under the pilot, they were talking about 6,500 accounts that would fall within the range of where they made the household income was less than 34,000.
So,
37,500, Tom. 37,500.
37,500.
and that wasn't, if I remember right, it wasn't customer accounts. Those are people.
That's correct.
It's based off the
So,
population.
I mean, it's
so-
based on the population.
Right.
So it would be less. The number of
I-
accounts would be less.
I would imagine it would be.
So we'd be looking at a lower impact.
Right.
Go ahead, Mr. Bryant.
So Lori, one of the other things that was introduced is that moving from, currently we have residential at either an all-electric rate or just your standard non-all-electric rate. And it was going to be synergizing the entire residential group into the all-electric rate. And what rough percentage wise is that less than the non-all-electric?
So if you look at, you can just look at the first box there of our staff recommendations. So when you go to the winter rate or the summer rate, if you look at year 2024, so it's after you get past 1,000 kWh. In the summer, Rob, come down a little bit in the next block of stuff. Keep going, yeah. So right there, so in the summer rate, it's 0.069 cents. And then when you get to the winter, it's 0.037. So that's the impact of all electric customers.
That is their rate, right?
Right, their cost per kWh.
But what is their current non-all-electric rate? So my question is, if my house is not all electric.
So you would be the 06911. Or well, so up above.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So the summer would be 06 nine,
Yeah,
and then the winter would be 066.
but if I was, I don't know, maybe either I'm not understanding what you're saying or you're not getting what I'm asking is how much percentage wise is all electric rates right now than standard rates for
That
residential?
might,
Is it like 98% of it?
So every customer is different, right? So every.
I
single customer is
understand.
different.
I'm gonna ask for a general,
So-
because what I'm trying to do, I'll just tell you what I'm trying to do is, I'm looking at trying to holistically understand what the difference is gonna be, because we're talking about a 2.25%, but there's gonna be a slight diminishing of the original anyway, because the base rate, as far as what they're paying, if they don't have all electric, is gonna slightly change anyway. So that 2.25 may not be 2.25, it may be 2.21 the first year.
And it's not necessarily going to change. And so the idea that it's going to change because it merged into the all electric rate isn't necessarily real. So today you pay 0.06466
Okay.
for all KWH every month, all the time. The all electric guys, they have a different rate, right? So they have a base rate that's 0.06466. And then in the winter above 1,000 KWH, it decreases, right? So you as a non-all electric customer will likely never exceed 1,000 KWH in the wintertime. You may if you're doing something, but effectively it is for those people who will then exceed 1,000 KWH in the wintertime. And generally, only speaking, the electric users, heat users, will exceed that 1,000 KWH. For most of us, we don't get close to that on the wintertime. We do on the summertime, but not on the wintertime. So generally, it won't have any impact on you non-heating electric customers.
Okay, so to clarify, I didn't understand what you were saying. Thank you very much.
To that point, we are trying to increase our winter load by some of the programs we have out there. So we're trying to build our revenue in the wintertime and hopefully incentivize them. But as Andrew said, once you get past that first tier into the second tier, the price becomes a little bit cheaper. But those normally are dollars we're not collecting. So that's kind of our way of staying competitive and building our revenue in the winter.
So on top of that, a little bit is we set our required capacity levels in the summertime. That's when us as a utility peak. And we're required to carry 115% of that peak with SPP as a requirement of belonging to the organization. And so therefore, the flatter you can bring that curve, right? So instead of just winter being high and the other months being low, is the more you can bring the lower months up, the flatter that gets for everybody. And so the idea is that can we increase winter load by doing certain things and therefore flatten that curve and share in that benefit of having a resource that we pay for no matter what, that's then there, that our load gets flatter. So that's the goal.
Lori, I got one question if the board would. Okay, so, and I didn't catch this earlier and it's not here, but earlier you talked about a increase required for 2026, 2027.
In both the 90-day ERC O&M and the 90-day ERC and 120-day O&M, it would, the 2.5 on the 90-90, the 2.5%, and it would require a 3.5% in 2027. In the 90-day ERC and 120, it would require a 2%, I believe, in 26 and or 3.5 in 26 and 2% in 27.
Okay. Didn't want to lose sight of that was a requirement that was there as well.
Hang on a second. So that's a requirement that's there. Is that here in the data? Because I apologize. We just got the data on Monday, so I haven't. I mean, I've looked at it and I've looked at it. Is that on here?
So we did not add that to the sheets to maintain the number of days that are for 90 days. As you can see in both the requested alternative and the alternative option, those fall below that 90 and 120 days that we are listing. And so if you wanted to maintain either 90-day O and M or 120-day O and M, it would require rate increases in those outer years.
So if we would have added it, you wouldn't have seen the drop off. So,
I hear you, but
Although-
again, I have to believe that it's somewhere out there in a model that was not provided to us again. And I mean, I'm sorry, that really frustrates me because I thought we were gonna be able to see everything, A, by Friday, and B, you know, I know Mr. Brown, you know, said, hey, pretty easy to put new inputs in, run a model, and, you know, so we're seeing a presentation from that, and I mean, you know, I'm sure many other board members also took the time to read the cost studies last time, so. I'm sorry, go ahead.
And we were just asking for a 3-year increase. We weren't going to expand it to a 5-year increase.
So for me, you know, looking at the third option, the 90 and 120 would be that the only way that we would have to have the increase back into 26 or 27 is if we want to stay at the 120. But if we shoot for the 120, and then because we won't get to 120 with the rate increases we're going to get, and it's important to understand that if you put in increases, you're going to peak somewhere, and it's hard to. I'm a cost analyst. I can tell you it's really hard to predict the future because there's so many variables that are always moving. But even at that 113 doesn't get us to the 120, but it gets us above our 90, and it gives us enough of a cushion that when we get to 2027, we may say, you know what, 90 will be okay. We don't have to go back up to 120. So at that point, we can look at possibly either delaying or decreasing the next increase. But I do have to agree with Mr. Mylan's comment last time was that sometimes it's better to have more frequent small increases than it is to wait and delay and then have large changes. But you know, what I'm seeing in here, even in looking at that alternative, which kind of is, it's taken away some from the original, but not going so low that I'm worried that that middle one, the reality is the way inflation has been moving. I don't know that we would ever hit 90. And that would be my fear, is we would put in these increases and never see what the goal that we're trying to reach to help keep our borrowing dollars as cheap as possible. So even if you go to that third alternative, I'm seeing that it's basically, from my calculations, it would be for the water side, it would be $6.24 a month by the increase by 2025. So, you know, and then it remains at that. So you'd overall, the total end, it'd be whatever your bill is today. If it's $40, it'd be $46.24. On the electric side, if your bill is $100, by 2025, it'd be $105.94. So it'd go up $5.94. Water would go up $6.24, 11, 12. So overall, it's about a $12.15 a month increase at the end of 2 years from now.
And the 93 cents would be expected to fall off in 28,
Okay.
right?
So-
Because it would be fully collected.
Okay, so that portion of it would, but it's going to be there for 25, you know,
Yeah,
at the end of 25, 26, 27. So for a few years, people are going to, you know, you're going to have about a $12 a month increase. 2 years from now, your bill will be $12 more, barring anything else unexpected that we see. So
Are you talking just electric or water?
electric and water. Yeah, that would be the combined. If we went with a 90 and 120, that's, at least that's the calculations I'm coming up with. And it's, I'm not saying that mine are right, but I'm not saying that they're wrong. So, they're close, I can tell you.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board or I guess questions to staff?
I
Seeing,
think we need to look at the fixed charges. For the, you talk about, a $12 increase over two years. Well, if we cut the service charge in half from 24 to 12 for the people that are suffering in our community who are not able to pay their bills now, they're gonna see, that's gonna mean that they really, that will take care of that increase. That
So,
dollar increase. They'll be, paying $12 less a month. If, or at some point, whether it's $12, $10, 50%, 100%. I just think that we need to look at that fixed charge.
But one of the things that, and it's been, sorry, Lori, but it's been a few years back that the decision was made to increase the base rate, the base customer charge. And while it sounds heinous or whatever somebody wants to think of this, if you have $100 bill, your total electric bill is $100 a month, and your base bill, your base charge is 50, okay? That means that your electric usage is the rest of it, because your base, there is going to be costs besides just the electricity you use. There is the maintenance of the system that has to be done. I mean, I know that no one wants to pay, but if you don't maintain your car, the gas you put in it doesn't matter anymore because your car doesn't run. Same way with our system. So the decision was made by the board at some point to raise the base because two reasons. Number one, it takes away how much is your electric usage, because that's what has the chance to go way up and way down. So it takes away the volatility of a bill where if your base was only $20 and 80 of it's your electricity and you have a high usage month, your bill may be $270. But if it's 50, now you're cutting down that variability. So your bill is more stable through the year. The other issue that we saw is that whether we like it or not, we have part-time citizens in Wyandotte County who own property that pay a bill. But if everything is based off your usage and they're not home during the winter, then they're not paying the base rate. They're not paying the maintenance on the system because they're not using electricity. And if it's tied into that, you're not collecting the maintenance that pays for the water or the pipes and the lines and the poles. So you have to balance it out and make sure that there's at least a base charge in there that collects and covers your maintenance costs and your infrastructure improvements that are needed to keep water running and electricity there. So
By moving it to the variable cost instead of having it in the base rates, those impact those older housing stock and the less efficient homes. And if that's where we want to move the cost, then that's where we move the cost. But that's where, exactly like Jeff said, is those costs are going to move, and generally those less efficient homes would be the ones that would be hit hardest by changing those levers up and down.
and we know that's where a lot of our lower income people are living. So you're really adding more cost to them by going that direction as opposed to reducing costs. But the cost has got to be made up in one bucket or the other, okay? Otherwise, if we just reduce the fixed costs and we agree on the 1.5, 1.5, 2.5, 2.5, whatever it is, or reduce that, it's putting pressure on that variable charge to be able to carry us through, because it takes both of them to make up this revenue.
I don't disagree, but we're talking about a small segment or a portion of the customers. If you want to raise it to 24, 26, I'll pay that. I've got no problem with it. But there are people out there that cannot pay what they've got now, what the bill is now. And if we raise those fixed charges, we don't know, we don't know how much that is, how much that would be. If we cut it in half or whatever, for those that are making less than 37.5 or disabled, what that impact would be is that we don't know.
That's right.
So what we talked about, Tom, we was talking about earlier, having a low income rate, and we said mostly all these things need to be handled outside the rate case, you know, so if the board wants to talk about a program after we approve the rates.
That was gonna be my next question is, can we go ahead and
Yes.
approve this?
Yes.
Whatever
Yes, I would.
proposal we do, and then visit the fixed fees that we have
Right.
and make those adjustments if we deem that
Right,
that it's appropriate.
right. Okay.
And
We'll have
can
to-
we legally, outside of the rate study and rate hearing, can we put I don't know if you call it a rider or a rebate or something in that as a board, we approve that says if you're at this level or below, or you meet these certain stipulation qualifications that you qualify for a reduction to your base rate, your base charge.
Yes.
We can do that without having to go through this whole
Without
thing.
the rate hearing.
We could always lower.
We can, okay. I just want to make sure that we don't, 6 months from now, we're sitting around and we're wondering why we couldn't get it done because we found out that we're handcuffed and we're not allowed to outside of this. So
That's one primary reason that we would recommend that's how you address it, through some kind of rebate program or a credit on the bill that is not part of the rate process, doesn't require all of these hearings, and also doesn't require the engineers to rerun all of the numbers if you made adjustments to that. So we highly recommend that you look at it following this rate hearing and do consider what could be done.
Well, so when are we going to do that, board?
Well, so this raises a rather interesting situation to me because I was leaning toward the 9120, but thinking about the idea that the reasoning behind that was it's less of an impact overall on our most, our lower income housing or residents. But if we're able to come in and do a rebate program or something like that, that can impact them directly, then going 90 and 20 doesn't really help us get to where we need for our O&M costs, because it's going to come directly out of that, because your fixed bucket is your O&M costs. So now I'm leaning toward the original recommendation of 2.5, knowing that we're putting the burden on those who can afford the bill, and then come back with a rebate program to help those who struggle the most. So this is kind of changing my thought pattern that I had up until 1 minute ago.
Okay, Rose, I know you've worked with Commissioner Bynum.
Please turn your mic on.
I know you've worked with Commissioner Bynum on trying to separate the bill and also with this,
Reduction of the pilot?
right,
Yes.
on the 37. So you are familiar with how that list is compiled or how those customers would be identified?
They actually, in their models, they actually relied on BPU data to help them get to those numbers. So,
Okay,
I think they also use their senior rebate program.
They did.
That they do.
okay.
they did.
Okay. That's a question. Thank you.
So I need to know what this board is committing to do with respect to the rebate program, because I've been on this board almost 4 years, and it takes this ship a while to get anything implemented, and I need to know what this board's commitment is to that.
Are you talking about a time frame?
I am. And I mean implementation. I don't mean to start another committee or a task force to put this in place.
So I would ask that because I'm going to in a minute make a motion. So I would ask that staff have before the board a proposal, and I would be okay if it's a 2-tiered, if it starts in 23 at a smaller amount, and then, like maybe it's like $3 or $4 off the base rate the first year, and maybe an additional 5 or 6, to maybe get to $10 off that base charge by 2024. And I'd like to see that in front of us with the impact that it's going to be in a presentation that we as a board could vote on by the August 16th meeting. I know that that's pushing time, but I think that the reality is that gives us 1, 2, 3, that gives us 4 weeks from almost 5 weeks to come up with that.
So
I think dovetailing off what Tom was talking about, where let's find the criteria. That's first, it would be defining the criteria that's going to be needed to select who is going to qualify for this. And then, I mean, I don't care if it's a single, but I'm thinking if the staff looks at it and says, we're better off to tier it in, like let's take some of this increase that they're going to be seeing and remove it the first year, and then they're going to have another increase year number 2. Year number 2, we give them another decrease, like a rebate, and the rebate just changes 1 year over 2.
So you're not looking for us to know how many people that are, the customers that is, or anything like that?
Well, I think that we're going to have somewhat,
But not by August 16th.
I understand that, but I think that if we delay too long, they're going to start getting bills.
I mean, right.
So that's what I'm looking at is if we vote on this rate increase tonight, when will people see it on their bill?
It'll be in their August bill, yes.
That they pay in September. That's why, I'm sorry, but that's why I would like, and here's the thing, if you do it as a 2-tiered, maybe we do just tier 1 and we focus on tier 1 this year. And then we can amend it in next year. And by then we'll know how many people have qualified and we'll understand the implications of this and see, wait a minute, we're under collecting where we needed to be. So we're not going to go as much, or actually not as many people qualified as we expected. So year 2, we can actually bump it up a little bit.
So tier 1 means what?
It would be like a 2-tier, it would be a 2 years of rebates. So the first year doesn't have to be the total rebate for the 2 years because they're not seeing the total increase till year 2. It would just be enough to kind of offset year 1's increase.
Jeff, you're just talking
We're gonna have to
about,
have a lot to work with, Jeff. I mean, there's, otherwise, we're just pulling numbers out of the air, okay? So
Okay, well then I will make it simpler then.
Is that
Yeah,
correct?
I will make it simpler then. If a customer is expected, according to this, to see $5.94 a month by 2025, but it's not, it's $4.27 in 2024, according to the bottom right there. Well, on this side over here, the first one, $5.93. I'd like to see something before us that says, here's how we're going to reduce our most susceptible customers by $6 a month on a rebate. And that basically offsets the increases that they would see.
No. Let me ask a quick question. And Lori may be able to answer it. How much do we know about our customers in terms of what their financial well-being is? Where their income levels are, where they're.
So the only time we get any income information is if the customer is applying for the late payment penalty waiver.
Okay.
That's the only time.
Other than that.
Yes, other than that, we don't collect any income.
That's why I say you do it. And when I say tier, I don't mean like there'll be 2 different tiers of people. I'm just saying that you implement it in 2 phases. Okay. So the first year you implement it for $6 because that's what their increase is going to be. And you say, you have to apply for it. And here's our criteria. So we would ask the staff come to us with the criteria that they recommend, and the UG probably has criteria that they're using already for the senior rebate. So maybe we use those criteria to start with and see how many that applies to.
That was my thought to work with. I think it's Mike Grimm that gathered a lot of that information.
Yeah,
out of
because
the
they already
UG.
have that kind of, they already have a baseline of what they use for criteria. Let's use the same criteria, have an application process,
So
blast this information out. I know it'll take a while.
if I'm following you correctly, the criteria will be based on household income. So if the household income does not exceed this amount
Disability.
or disability.
Yeah.
So if they're disabled, then they can pay my bill and their bill too, that they.
Okay, well then let's go by, I'm okay with going by income.
Okay.
All right,
okay.
but.
Hold on a second, Jeff. Go ahead, Angela.
The UG is currently tweaking theirs a little bit to be more in line with the Kansas Homestead Act for
Okay.
property tax rebates. There is and what will be proposed, and it's going to be at the next standing committee, is there is you have to meet both low income and elderly, or low income and disabled, or low income and veteran. So the low income piece has to be in there for the UG. So I don't know if that's.
That would work, that would
and
work
then
perfectly. I
and
mean,
they have to
I trust
submit an
staff to come
application.
back with a recommendation. I just want to see the recommendation sooner and not later. And I think from seeing that Andrew is shaking his head, I think he understands what I'm asking for. And it doesn't have to be real complicated, and it doesn't have to cover 2 years of increases the first year. It just needs to cover the first years.
Let me say something. We're dealing with anticipation and speculation. You're going back what I said 20 years ago. Take small steps at a time. You're coming around the same thing. What can we do to make sure the rate increase will be less than it is now, or spread out over a period of time? Exactly what I said 20 years ago. Here we are again. Staff, we need to come back with adjustment based on what we hear tonight. Stop speculation. Let's deal with something specifically. We're hearing tonight that the rate increase we needed, let's spread it out. You call it tier, I call it something else. 6-month intervals. What have you?
So just so I'm clear, and I think we get where you're at, Jeff. I just want to make sure that we establish what the threshold is. So is the threshold based on what the UG is providing?
Yes.
Okay.
It sounds great to me.
Right,
I mean,
okay.
like I said, I would be okay with the staff recommendation, but if there's already something out there,
Okay,
then why reinvent the wheel?
okay.
You know, but I don't think that this is really like life-changing. I mean, it would be life-changing for those customers who have to pay it, who are already struggling, but I don't think it's going to be, if it's 5,000 of our customers, that's $30,000 a month.
Yeah.
That's $6. They're still going to pay their regular bill. It's just that $6 increase is going to be basically waived through a.
So
a
the
rebate.
unknown with that is we will know what the income barrier is and how to apply it there. We won't know how many customers it's going to impact and what the impact on our revenue is going to be.
But the nice thing about that is that if we put it in as a single year to start with, at that level, by the time we get to 2024, we're going to understand how many people are in the
Yeah,
program,
no,
and then we'll have
yeah,
a better
we'll
idea
be able
of
to
how to adjust it for 2025.
We'll understand over time.
And
Well, you know, the staff has recommended the rate increase is justifiable based on increases and so forth. What we're trying to do now is make sure the customers are not affected as a crash program. It's too much too soon. Can we do something to make it be a little easier to implement it? That's what we're trying to say now, that we're backing up. I'm convinced that the proposal in terms of the increase is needed, no doubt about it. We need to do small steps at a time. How can we do that? We do sit down and make sure we don't do it in 1 year. Spread it out, folks. That's what the people are saying. They're saying they don't want any increase at all, but my point is, if we got to do it, make it easy on us. They're saying in very simple terms, too much too soon. What can we do to make sure that 2.5 or 6% can be less over a period of time? I said it 20 years ago. They refused to do it. We're right back. Let's do it now. Forget the past, let's deal with the future. Thank you.
So my last question is this, I mean, we met 2 weeks ago. We didn't take action. We're meeting tonight. I'm not sure if there's going to be a vote to approve and then come back, or we're going to delay it for another month. But if we do, The only thing I'm hearing is reducing the customer charge by a certain percentage based off a measure that the UG is currently using. Is there anything else the board want us to consider? Otherwise, we're just constantly moving the thing down the road and we're constantly trying to figure out how do we get to the finish line?
What is, to Mr. Mylan's point, what does the alternative option look like if you do 1.5% through 2025, 2026, and 2027?
There's a different way to.
I mean, that's a small,
It's like, you
Yes,
get the
sir.
goal line a different way.
yes, sir.
You want to do 100-yard dash, you can't do that fast, make it slowly. Don't get to the goal line. The goal line, we need to increase based on what we need to run this utility. Water needs to increase, no doubt about it.
So I said that was my last question. Now, Rose, you're making me ask another question. So is that 1.5 for 5 years plus the customer charge? Change, or is it just the 1.5?
Ladies and gentlemen, you can only increase in the years in which you have given notice. And you cannot increase a higher overall than you have given notice for. You gave notice on the electric side for 2 years and on the water side for 3 years. That's all that you can increase at this time without a further study and a further hearing.
And go start all over again.
Thank you.
So I don't know if I'll be out of order here, but seeing that I'm feeling confident that we're going to put something in place that is going to help our lower income residents. I am going to make a motion to adopt the original rate increase proposal made by staff, which is the 120, the first box on the left, that would be the 3 years of water at 6%, and then the 2 years of electric, which will also push back up the amount of increase for the industrial and commercial. And hopefully that will also help lessen the burden of us taking this base rate down for lower income people. So,
Well, we went 10 years without an increase. So we can still go a few years before we get the increase.
So, Mr. Bryan, I'm going to have to clarify what your motion is, please.
so the original staff recommendation made during the rate hearing is what I'm making a motion for, which was
On electric and water?
electric and water, the 6% 3-year increase for 3 years of 6% on the water. And then there's different tiers for the electric, but the original rate proposal put before the board at the beginning of all this.
Well, wait a minute. Point of order.
Yes, sir.
Hold on. Just don't jump in there. Let's wait a minute. You need to give staff opportunity to digest what we're saying. They have ongoing contracts. They need to be done. They're not getting any better. Give the staff a chance to adjust what they can live with. You have some outgoing contracts that needs the money.
Bob, this is
Bob,
what staff recommends.
So.
Yeah, Mr. Mylan.
Originally said.
This is what they want, but this is their recommendation.
Okay.
The first one, stat.
Yeah.
We'll make it-
Yeah, I'm just going back to phase 1 and saying, I'm making a motion to adopt phase 1 of the
And
recommendations.
for clarification, does that mean you're making a motion to adopt the order as proposed?
Yes.
Okay.
The original, yes, order as proposed, as presented by the staff during the rate hearing.
Ms. Peters, my understanding is that the order that you proposed and drafted implemented the original recommendations.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Yes, that is my motion.
Thank you.
But do it.
We have a motion on the floor to adopt staff's original recommendations on both the electric side and the water side. Do I have a second?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Roll call Haley. Mylan,
Call my name.
Mr. Mylan?
yes. Mulvaney Henry,
No.
Bryant,
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Groneman.
Aye.
That motion carries. The order is adopted.
Ms. Peters, is there anything left that require any board action?
Excuse me, just a second. I had a script for you. Pardon me, ladies and gentlemen. I do not believe that there is anything left that requires board action. And so, ladies and gentlemen, you have made a decision, and as you know, under your charter ordinance, the rate hearing, the rate decision has to be made within 5 days of the conclusion of the hearing. Since you have made a decision, I would recommend to you that you conclude the rate hearing. I know that you have given staff a direction to follow up on another matter, and you may want to go ahead and take that as a motion after you conclude this rate hearing, because I know that you have asked staff to do an additional thing, but I'd like to perhaps have you make that as a formal direction to staff after the hearing officer closes the rate hearing, if that made sense to you. I want to have that be part of your regular order of business and not necessarily part of your rate hearing, is pursuing that customer rebate or credit for these rate increase amounts.
So Kathy, are you saying that we need to make a motion to close the rate hearing?
I think the hearing officer can make that declaration.
Right, and my understanding is that by adopting this proposed order, without any modifications, that would conclude the rate hearing.
Yes.
Any further action that you may take can be taken independently of the rate hearing, so it doesn't, but it's not within the scope of the rate hearing.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
And that fits in with the theory that you want to do this outside the rate hearing so that you can do it without being under any obligation to have notices or wait 90 days or adjust it or tweak it if you need to.
Yeah.
So I would ask then the hearing officer to go ahead and formally close your rate hearing.
Okay, unless there's any other comment or objection, I feel the hearing has been concluded and would close the rate hearing at this time. Turn it back over to BP staff for the regular meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, board. I will now, miscellaneous comments. I'll ask Jeremy Ash to come up. I did ask Jeremy to kind of update where we are with our storm restoration. Everybody in the room knows that, I think Friday of last week, we had 80, 90, 70, 80, 90 mile an hour winds to come through, and it wreaked havoc on our electric system. But it wasn't just BPU, it was the surrounding area as well. So Jeremy, if you can kind of bring us up to speed with where we are.
Sure. So I think everybody in the room knows Friday afternoon, early evening, we took a pretty severe blow to our system. We know we sustained outages to little over 38,000 of our 65,000 customers. So in terms of what the size of that disruption was, that's the largest disruption that we've had, certainly in my managerial career. But I think you have to go back to our large ice storm we had in the 90s, where we would have maybe had more than that. But at any rate, 38,000. One of our systems reported that when it grabbed some data down, we had as many as 43,000 customers off. And that could have been a data dump of a time breakers were opening in the process of closing. And so there was some sort of cross pollination of the data. But we do know we had over 38,000 that sustained off starting at about a little after 4 o'clock Friday. We did have some crews held in on site at when the storm came in. So we were able to get some support out into the city pretty quick. We had 19 breakers, what we call stand open, which means there was a fault on the line for some reason, whether it be tree interference or wire down, pole broken, whatever it was. And so the breaker doing what it does to protect our system and to protect the public, the breaker opens up, and that kills the entire circuit from the substation to the very end of the very last piece of line. So we had 19 of those substation breakers stand open for sustained period. And that's really our first priority once we ensure that there's nothing compromising our transmission system that's going to affect, number one, our generator, or number two, our ability to import power should we need to do that. Then we move on to those large distribution circuits to try to get those up and going, because many of those are what feeds public safety and public service buildings and facilities, the fire stations, the police stations, that kind of thing. So those services are also very important during times like this. So we immediately, Darren and the team, electric operations, jumped into action, and we began gathering other resources, calling in everybody that we could call in that works here at BPU. We also had our contract crews on standby. We're able to get all of those folks in, and we also called for some help that they had in Oklahoma. So those folks responded Saturday morning, along with we reached out to Kansas Municipal Utilities Saturday, and we got crews from Clay Center, Pratt, and McPherson. Unfortunately, Pratt came in and worked a day, and Sunday they got hit with a storm, and so they got called away to go back home. But we did just this morning actually release McPherson and Clay Center. So really everybody that works at the service center in any capacity, whether you were a clerk, an engineer, a mapper, a mechanic, didn't matter what you did, you were in here in some kind of way helping us. So it was really well organized. In my opinion, Darren and his team did a fabulous job, and we were able to get lights to everybody that could have lights by late yesterday afternoon. There's still a number of customers that require some type of repair to their house, to restore service. And that's something that BPU is not in control of. When a customer has to make certain repairs, they require a inspection from the city electrical inspector's office, and BPU doesn't have any say so in that process. So some of those customers are waiting on inspection, some of them are waiting on electricians, some of them might be waiting on parts and pieces. I'm not real sure, but there's just a handful of those kind of folks left in the city right now. As of tomorrow, I believe, Darren can correct me if I'm wrong, all of our crews will be back to their normal scheduled shifts. So that's a good thing, because they've had their shifts disrupted since Friday. What we typically do when we get a large event like this, and we have out of town help or contract help that's in here and not familiar with our system, we put them on a 16-hour shift that's pretty much all daylight, if we can do that, 7 to 11, that kind of thing. We rotate our crews around to where they come in and they go 3 to 7 in the morning. A couple of reasons there. Number one, they're more familiar with our system, and it's just better for them to be here in the dark. But number two, they're also familiar with navigating the city and getting around. It's just a more efficient use of our time and our resources. So yesterday afternoon, we got to the point where we could actually tell those folks, if you don't want to be here, you don't need to. It's kind of voluntary. 75% of them said, hey, I'll stay and finish it out. Quarter of them were pretty beat and they went on home. So, but finished out today a little bit in the same manner, and tomorrow they're all back to normal schedule.
Any questions from the board? Tomorrow I'll be, and I've already got an email prepared. I asked Jeremy to read it, make sure I got everything correct in it, but I'll be sending an email out global to, it'll be a short one, just thanking everybody for their participation, showing up, and when you get in the long hours of restoration processes, periods like this, it does take a toll on you. And then these guys are away from their families for quite a long period of time as well. And as you guys all know, the conditions that they're working under, it's quite dangerous, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong. They're skilled in what they do. They look out for one another. They look out for themselves. They look out for the community. We try to get to the most dangerous situations first, the largest outages first, like Jeremy talked about, and so I'll be thanking them for all their participation. In addition, I'll be sending letters to Clay Center, to Pratt, and to McPherson for sending crews over to help us out. That's part of how the mutual aid program works. We are part of a mutual aid program to where if they need us, if we can afford to send people out to help smaller towns, other communities, even larger utilities at times, we'll provide that assistance. But at the same time, we've had people come in from other utilities to help us out too. So it is a good program, and I'm glad we're able to participate whenever we can.
One of the last things I'll mention is we've already started, we've sort of refined's a bad word, but we've tuned our process to where this event will likely be a recoverable event. I haven't heard anything from the state level out of the governor's office yet, but I know Mayor Garner declared emergency, which is a help to us. As many of those can happen, takes notice at Topeka. Usually then we at later time get the notice that it's going to be a recoverable event through FEMA. So we got quite a few hoops we have to jump through. And it's a long process. Lori usually doesn't see that money back for 18 to 24 months. And the three most recent, I think the largest amount we have collected back is about 700,000, 690,000, somewhere in there. And I fully expect this one to be $1.3 million, somewhere in there. So we're going to do our best to do our paperwork right and get everything where we can get most of that back.
Well, and to that end, the unified government also joined in our efforts in making these FEMA applications too. So there is money that the unified government can recover at the same time we're making our application. So normally our damage is
Far
much
exceeds
theirs, but they can pick up some of their expenses as well.
The state gets allocated a certain financial benchmark that damages have to meet, and then that benchmark gets spread. I don't know what their formula looks like as far as why each county gets a different kind of threshold they have to hit. But that's how it works. And typically we typically exceed that number ourselves before they even tack on any UG damages. So
Jeremy, I don't have any questions. I do have a comment that I received so many, people telling me, please thank the staff for everything they did, for working through the contractors that came in, the other cities that sent in crews to help us out, and just everybody pitching in and working. There were, during it, there were some people got heated, but when you're in times of stress, that happens. But almost every one of them, I noticed that once their power was returned, they were very thankful. So it's the same way everybody is. It's hard to be nice when you're out of your comfort zone, and I think it reminded people that how important electricity is in our everyday life. So thank everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. That wraps up all the comments that I have. I'll turn it back over to you, Madam President.
Thank you. I'll open up for board comments. Mr. Haley.
Madam President. Thank you, Madam President. And to the last point, I'd like to thank very much everyone that responded from the BPU during the storm outage. I too heard from quite a few people, and the time and the response was very much appreciated. I did compare us to other cities and how we did, and the response time and how we came through during that is a matter of point of pride, certainly for me, being on this board and being a part of it, and we're grateful for that. I also want to thank Lori and Andrew for the update that they gave or the coming through the rate hearing, and especially as we were making this decision for the rate increase. the 13th, we did have the joint meeting. I want to recognize certainly the staff, especially our general manager, Mr. Johnson, for that joint meeting that we all the board attended, and of course the commission. It was just stellar. It was well done. The PowerPoint that was brought that showed what some of us have been talking about, and that leads to really one of my final points, the concern with us collecting taxes. We, the BPU, collecting UG taxes. The ripple effect being, and the way that Mr. Johnson laid it out in this PowerPoint. And by the way, if I have the permission to, I'd make my copy of the PowerPoint available to the public because it was done admirably. And the staff that put it together I very much appreciate. So my point is simply this, I would have supported the rate increase. I did not support the rate increase because I've heard from too many of the constituents who are the ratepayers that it cannot be afforded at this time. And I certainly feel and understand that and had to vote against the rate increase. But I want the staff to know that you made your point. I believe certainly that there needs to be more application of monies to offset what inflation and the needs for infrastructure improvements that can be taken, and the maintenance of what we've done or what this utility has done in an emergency and every day. That certainly it is time and it needs to be done. And that point has been well made. However, the problem is, and we all know, that without this bifurcation of bills, which is what I originally brought to this board, and the idea is caught, I'm glad to see some real steam, that we're going to split the bill or see the bill split between consumption, that is how much somebody uses in electricity and how much somebody uses in water consumption, versus the additional UG charges, the pilot and the other fees, two different bills. And so people are, if you get shut off because of you didn't pay your consumption bill, it's one thing, but you won't get shut off for 1 cent or for $10 or whatever of taxes, UG taxes. That would be a delayed structure. I'll be glad when that comes together. I'm happy for that to come together. And when that comes together, we can say then to people that we can reduce their bills. And I'm hoping that that would be the next shoe to drop, since the rate increase has been approved, again, not with my support, that we would be able to provide some relief to our UG taxpayers / BPU ratepayers, since we're collecting that. So that's really all that I have to say. Finally, I have to make my final pitch. I think I'm the only one, Madam President. I want the public to know, especially those that came out, I support opening the lobby, and I support, David Haley is strongly supporting and will support some sort of kiosk, if it's a kiosk, where there can be face-to-face interaction, a bilingual representative or two that would be there Monday through Saturday, as far as I'm concerned, 7 to 7, that can interact with someone. It just would be better all around. We're going to find the way. There was going to be found a way in the budget to put that lobby back open. We got this huge building, and we need to have that. It's not going to be that expensive whatsoever, and it should be done to have that face-to-face. And if I'm the only one, I might be on this board, I will continue to do what I can, and hopefully get some more assistance to have it understood. That's the kind of utility that we need to have customer service at an all-time high. Sorry for the length of that, Madam President, but appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Haley. Mr. Groneman?
Okay, I'm not going to have any really additional comments other than what I made at the last meeting, other than the fact that the bottom line is, as a board member, I'm here to look out for the customer and to make sure that the utility operates and is viable. And there's a double-edged sword there, because to make sure that we operate and that we're viable, increasing the rates is sometimes necessary. But also, as I said last time, we also need to look out for the people that are struggling and make some effort to assist them in their struggles. And I think that hopefully that we'll be able to do that when we take up the other issues that we talked about this evening. And other than that, Jeremy, you and your people, well, not only them, but everybody at the BPU. I know David's staff was putting out updates, and the IT, everybody that worked the storm restoration. I think you did a wonderful job, and like Mr. Haley said, it's was something that we can be proud of, that we got through it and the way that we did. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Groneman. Mr. Mylan?
Thank you, thank you. Well, I'd like to say, Jeremy, thanks a lot for the staff with the hard work for many, many hours to make sure we got power restored as soon as possible. So it's a pleasure to know we have a staff that dedicated to work 24 hours around the clock to make sure we become comfortable again. That's most important. The reality tonight represents the board's interest in making sure that we recognize the request for a rate increase is necessary. Give the staff credit for making sure they brought forth a reasonable presentation as to why we need it. We know our customers don't want it, but sometimes if you don't deal with reality, they deal with you. Well said on that deal. So hopefully that somewhere along the line, we can make that reality come down small steps at a time, that they won't realize the impact they may have on their pocketbook or their total income. Saying that, I'd like to thank the general manager for taking the opportunity to adhere to the Baptist Ministers Union in this particular area. We requested to hear a presentation as to how we do business here. So that was done yesterday. And what I'm really trying to say is those groups that need to have a special presentation to find out what we do and how we do it, all you have to do is request from the general manager. We'll be more than happy to accommodate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mylan. Mr. Bryant?
There are times being a board member is far more stressful than I ever anticipated. While it is never pleasant to go through a rate hearing, failing to maintain our financial responsibilities is unacceptable. The residents and businesses in our city expect us to make the hard decisions that will keep our utilities flowing today, tomorrow, and into the future. I am feeling better about this rate increase, knowing that we'll be putting a policy in place that will allow our most vulnerable citizens to offset the increases. I want to thank the staff for their patience and the public for their input during this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. Mrs. Gonzalez?
As Jeff mentioned, life, being a board member is a balance. It's a balance between what's good for the utility to keep us viable and what we can do to help our customers. It's never an easy task, but somehow I feel like the decisions and discussions tonight will lead to something hopefully for the most vulnerable. I'd like to thank our community members who come out and take the time to stand at the microphone and give us your opinions and your thoughts. Darren, hats off to you and your crew. I'm so proud of the utility, and people's tempers I know can get very short when they're without power, and we're spoiled when it comes right down to it. But nobody wants to be hot in the last couple of days. I was trying to weigh personally, was it better back in the ice storm and I think 2002? Or was it better now to be hot when I was cold? I couldn't decide. Neither time was wonderful, but thanks to the staff, Darren, your group deserves donuts or something. That's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Gonzalez. I may give Senator Haley a run for his money tonight, so on length. So I just want to be really clear. As a lot of board members have said, you know, this position has to balance the needs of this utility to continue to provide safe water, reliable power to this community. And we have significant pockets of our infrastructure that are aging. I fully understand and appreciate the need to restore and replace our aging infrastructure. And this is the first rate hearing I've gone through. I know you guys have heard a million times, we haven't had rate increases on the water side this many years, electric side this many years. And as board members have pointed out, this is not easy, but it is necessary in certain circumstances. What I would have voted for tonight was the staff recommendation on the water side and the requested alternative on the electric side, because I think that struck the best balance that I thought we could get to while we're trying to balance the significant needs of our community members, our neighbors, our customers. So I don't want the staff, particularly the staff who worked so hard on these cost of service studies, to think in any way that my vote of no tonight was me not understanding what this utility needs to do. I understand it. I do appreciate all of the staff's efforts on this. I appreciate the staff putting up with me during this rate hearing. I know I've been a lot. I won't apologize for it because I'm trying to do my job, but I do appreciate it, and I appreciate the effort. And I appreciated the staff coming back with the alternatives that were proposed this evening to at least give a different alternative for this board to look at. I appreciate the board's indulgence. I guess I'll appreciate the board putting up with me throughout this process. What I will continue to do, we'll move forward, but to push for the implementation of this utility rebate program on the utility side. Several members of the public came here tonight and shared very specific stories about how our policies and our procedures affect everyday customers on a daily basis. That is not lost on me. I don't believe it's lost on this board. And I think the question that we have in front of us now is, what are we willing to do about it? We have been told tonight by our council, we're allowed to do this outside of the rate hearing process. Maybe that's a better thing. Maybe we can get this done, but I won't stop pushing for the implementation of this. I stated it during the hearing tonight. I've been on this board almost 4 years, and I know it can move at a snail's pace at times. Our community has been crying out to us the entire time I've been on this board. And that's not going to stop tomorrow, and I recognize that. I will also continue to push for separation of the UG charges from the BPU bills. I said it last week in the joint meeting with the commissioners. You know, a $300 bill, all due at one time and includes everything on it, is likely more difficult for one of our residents to pay than it might be to budget $180 that's due here, $125 that's due here, and maybe $75 that's due here. And I know I didn't do that math properly. We all know I can't do the math. But that's not lost on us. And you know, Senator Haley brought, you know, with him to this board, you know, that suggestion. It's not that we haven't discussed it before, but he's pushed it and he's kept with it, and he's right. And we need to keep pushing for that. I do believe that we have begun a partnership with the unified government to work toward that, and I'm not going to stop until it's done. I want to thank the members of the public who came tonight. I want to thank the members of the public who come nearly every meeting, because you guys do share very personal experiences with us. I know there's frustration, but tonight you all did it in such a meaningful way that just, we really appreciate the input that y'all are bringing. On the storm restoration, I talked to at least a couple of the crews that were out because I saw them. I didn't stop their work. Don't worry, Darren. I know better than that. But it takes something like this, unfortunately, for folks in the community, who are frustrated, to realize this is something we all take for granted almost every day. And it's a really important part of our life. And we have folks, my next door neighbor included, who's a lead lineman here. I watched him come home at 7 o'clock in the morning, took out the trash along with me. And I yelled something over to him, and he said, "I just need 8 hours." I said, "No problem." And I saw him out in Argentine same night, went back on shift in the evening. And Darren, I know your crews have done that since Friday. And I think we all have an appreciation for the work that they do. And I hope that our residents also have an appreciation for what they do. I know it's frustrating to not have power, but I hope you all know how hard these folks have worked for the last many, many days to try to complete restoration here in KCK. Obviously, we couldn't do it without the help of our contractor partners, and of course, the utility crews from the other municipal utilities from Kansas that Jeremy mentioned earlier. So took a lot of folks working around the clock to do that, and we appreciate that. Last thing, and I know this is something that we continue to hear from our residents, and I think we heard it from the intervener in the rate hearing. We heard it from a couple of other board members tonight. And Mr. Johnson, I know you mentioned it as well. We have to take advantage of the infrastructure funding that is out there, that is being offered by the federal government today. This community in particular, we could be a poster child of what they're trying to do. And I commit, as long as I'm a board member, to continue pushing that and pushing the staff in that direction. I know that they are in that direction, but we need to be relentless about it. And I know we have to have partnership from the unified government. I hope that we get that. I'm actually very appreciative of the mayor for declaring disaster in KCK. That's important. I hope we're able to recoup as much as we can to pay for this restoration effort. But we have got to start taking advantage of those opportunities. And it can't just be talk anymore. We actually have to do it. So I guess with that, did I give, Haley, did I give you a run for your money? Thank you very much. That concludes my comments for the evening. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn has been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Roll call: Haley,
Aye.
Mylan,
Aye.
Mulvaney Henry,
Aye.
Bryant,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Groneman.
Aye.
That motion carries. This meeting is adjourned.